So this past Monday, I got a chance to sit down with my beautiful daughter in an epic clash of one of our favorite childhood games, Uno. Yeah, that's right. Uno. I used to love Uno as a kid. And we sat down and we had a blast. We sat down at the kitchen table together and just played Uno for about 15, 20 minutes. And so we play Uno a little bit differently, though, in our house. Madison's still learning how to play the game. And so we play a little bit different. Couple things. Number one, we just play with the colors and numbers. We don't play reverse or draw two or anything like that because it's just a little bit too complicated in her head still. And so she's still learning. If the symbols, the colors, or the numbers match, we can just play on the discard pile. The other way we play a little bit different is she loves to see, wouldn't we all? She loves to see the opponent's cards. So my cards are facing up, her cards are facing up the entire game, right? And so we're playing Uno. We're just having a good old time. And at one point, there was a blue played. I played a blue card, and she looked down at her card. She didn't see any blues, and so naturally, she goes to the draw pile. But before she does, I stop her and I say, "Madison, wait, check your numbers." She looks down again, and she sees that she has a yellow seven that she can play on top of the blue seven. And so she puts her yellow seven down, and I play a yellow four. Yellow four, she looks down. That was her last yellow. So she goes to the draw pile, and I say, "Wait, Madison, check your numbers." She looks down, and she sees a green four. And she lights up. She's so excited. She plays the green four on top, and she looks up at me and rocks my world. She says to me, "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you for helping me. I thought I didn't have what I needed, so I was trying to get more cards, but I had the card I needed to play all along." And immediately I felt the Holy Spirit remind me, "John, you have more cards in your hand than you think. You just need to check your numbers." So the title of this message today is appropriately, check your numbers. Check your numbers. And we're going to have some reference today around a story in the Old Testament that, of course, this happened right after this Uno story, because I got to tell you, for the 2 days after this occurrence with my daughter, God was just rocking me with, check out how much you actually have. What do you actually have? Check your numbers. What do you have in your life that you think you need something else, something different, something more, and you actually have what you need in your hand? And in my quiet time, as God was working with me throughout these couple days, my quiet time a day or two after, he brought me to the story in First Kings. And he brought me to the story of Elijah, one of the many stories of Elijah. Elijah is a very famous prophet in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And this story I had never read before. And he, of course, pointed it out and said, "I've been working like this all along in people's life. You just haven't slowed down enough to see it." And so we're going to pick up a story in First Kings chapter number 17. I'm going to be teaching out of the NLT Bible. First Kings chapter 17, and we're going to start in verse 8. Now, to give some context to the story before we go into it, Elijah is in the middle of a drought, and the Lord has asked him to tell his people that he will be not sending them rain to grow their crops until the appointed time. They don't know how long the appointed time will be. It ends up being about 3.5 years where there is no rain in the land at all because of the people's disobedience to the commandments of God. And so Elijah has spent the last several days, weeks, months, that the time is not clear, but he has spent a while next to a brook where it was constantly hydrating him, that nobody else knew about. And maybe you've heard this story in your past, that Elijah, during that time at the Kerith Brook, was being fed by ravens. So God was physically sending birds with meat and bread every single day to feed Elijah at the Kerith Brook while the rest of the people were suffering in this drought. And so we pick it up in verse 8, where it says, "Then the Lord said to Elijah, go and live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. I have instructed a widow there to feed you." So he went to Zarephath. As he arrived at the gates of the village, he saw a widow gathering sticks, and he asked her, "Would you please bring me a little water in a cup?" As she was going to get it, he called to her, "Bring me a bite of bread too." But she said, "I swear by the Lord your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house." Now I'm going to pause there. because we just unpack a lot, whether we realize it or not. It's interesting that the Lord would send Elijah to a widow, because in those days, a widow would be somebody that would be struggling to get along anyway. You know, that her husband couldn't go out and cultivate the crops. He couldn't go out and do the work to make the money to be able to barter to get what they needed to eat. And on top of that, they were in the middle of a drought. So she was a widow in a tough, tough spot. And God sent his prophet to be fed by that person, not by a wealthy person, not by somebody in power, not by somebody with influence, not by somebody with a calling. To a widow, he sent his prophet. And as he did, he asked her to get him a bite of bread too. And the first thing she focuses on, and I got convicted by this because this is the first thing I focus on often. The first thing she focuses on is what she doesn't have. She says, I swear by the Lord your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house. So how many times do I focus on what I don't have? I focus on what I don't have when God asks me to do something. I focus on what I don't see when God asks me to do something. I'm not that dissimilar from this widow. The next thing she says is, and I only have a handful of flour left in the jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of the jug. I was just gathering a few sticks to cook this last meal, and then my son and I will die. Man, I hear that and I think, that sounds drastic, but then I reflect and think, that's exactly how I think. That's exactly. I'm trying to do this one last thing, and I'm just and I got to be honest. What I got convicted of is not that the situation is not real, but that oftentimes we grovel in what we don't have, and not that it's not real at times, because it was real to this widow, but this widow had already forethought about what was going to happen because of what she didn't have. She focused on what she had and didn't have in the natural. She focused on the colors she could see at first. She focused on the yellows and the blues, but she didn't think about her numbers. She focused on what she didn't have. We pick it up in verse 13. It says, but Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Well, that's a hard one when you don't have a lot. That's a hard one when we don't have a lot. Don't be afraid. Go ahead and do just what you said, but make a little bread for me first. Hey, I know you got plans for the last part of but if you offer what you have to God first, if you offer it, make something for me first. Give it to God first. We see this in so many times in scripture. That one of the most famous stories in the Bible, Jesus feeding the 5,000. What does he do when the disciples give him the 5 loaves and the 2 fish? The first thing he does is he offers it to God. It says, make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son. God first, us second. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, there will always be flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and the crops grow again. Now this, while it seems like an unbelievable promise, I want you to put yourself in the widow's shoes. She's cooking her last meal in her head, and God sends someone she's never met and tells her these things, and basically tells her, give me what you are going to use to save yourself and your son. Give it to God first. And this is my promise. Now, this is a crazy notion. She was sacrificing the only thing she saw she had left, not knowing the result. She was promised a result. She felt like she was nudged, but let's just be honest. Let's just be 100% honest with each other right now. Sometimes when God promises us something on the backside of the offering of the last things that we have, it is very difficult to have that kind of faith. She wouldn't feed herself or her son their quote unquote last meal. Instead, she was being asked to offer what she had to God through the prophet Elijah first and trust the result. So my question to us today is, what do we have? Do we have time? Do we have relationships? Do we have health, memories, knowledge? a family that loves us, creativity. I got to tell you, if you're watching this online with me, you got something that centuries of people would have gone to the ends of the earth for the amount of knowledge that we have through this one device right here. This one device, the internet, through the computer you're watching this on or the phone that you're watching this on, has opened up a world of insight and knowledge to us like never before. People had to go through scrolls and texts and go to prophets and temples to be taught. Even more recently, how many of y'all had encyclopedias in your house or in the library where you had the encyclopedias that were taking up huge bookshelves, and those encyclopedias were basically null and void after 5 years? Like, a lot of the knowledge that were in those weren't caught up. But how are we using this? What do you have? How are we using it? Are we using it to scroll TikTok and Instagram? Are we using it to debate about the debate? Are we using it to troll people? Are we using it to criticize people? Are we using it to watch other people live out their dreams? Or are we using what we have to do what God is asking us to do? God has been working through me and in me over the last few days. Just a couple weeks ago, I resigned from an organization that I had worked in for 11 plus years. I had a very good role in this organization, and I resigned, luckily, with another opportunity that I will be going to here in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, there was about 3 weeks of gap. And after the dust settled of this resignation, it was a resignation that happened earlier than I was expecting. And so after the dust settled from the news of my exit, I just asked God in my quiet time after 4 or 5 days had passed, "Hey, what do you want me to do next?" Because I'm a doer. I'm somebody that needs to be productive at all times. And I had a job lined up, like I said, that would be starting in a few weeks. But man, I needed to do something productive. So that was a natural question for me. He told me something unexpected, like the nudging was unexpected. He asked me to use the time I had to clean my house. What? Clean my house? Like, right. Like, yeah, no, that's fine. But then what? And he was like, "No, I need you to clean my house. You need to clean your house." And as I continued to think about it and digest it, and anybody ever fought with God on what he's asking you to do? Like, I don't know about y'all. Sometimes I will ask God to tell me what to do with a preconceived idea of what that thing may be. Like, I will ask God, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" And in my head, I'm like, it's probably going to be one of these 3 things. Right. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, he's going to ask me to start a website. He's going to ask me to do a training course. He's going to ask me to start a YouTube channel. He's going to ask me to work on my YouTube channels that are already active. He's going to ask me to network with people. He's going to ask me to what? And I keep feeling this nudging. And clean your house evolves to, I need you to prepare your house. Because in the season I'm bringing you to, you're not going to have time to do it. And of course, I'm a doer. I'm also a planner. So my next question was, the season? And what I heard was crickets. I did not get the answer. I was like, "God, you want me to clean my house for what?" And he was like, that's not your problem. I need you to prepare your house." So I knew in my spirit that God wanted me to do a deep clean of my house. And I got busy. I mean, I started with the garage. I got my guest closet done. I got my spare closet done. I got my laundry room done. I got my pantry done. I got my kitchen done. I got my porch done. I got my kids' dresser. I got my kids' closet. Got my closet. Got my bathroom done. My kids' bath. I mean, I have thrown away in the last 4 days 30 bags of garbage that was just sitting, buried in the depths of the places of my house that nobody would ever see. The weird part about this is my wife thought I was crazier and crazier by the day. Like, you have to understand, we have just moved into this house 2 years prior. So the remnants of, if you've ever moved, the remnants of moving and having a 4 and 7-year-old, like we're just shoving stuff everywhere we possibly can, under bathroom drawers, under kitchen cabinets that haven't been used, on top of appliances that we got from friends at a wedding that we've used once and just shoved in the back, right? Everywhere we could put stuff that was not presentable to any guest at any given time, that's where we've put our stuff. And God's asking me to clean out all of those places. So literally, for the last 4 or 5 days, that's all I've been doing. My wife thinks I'm crazy. What's weird is I didn't get tired of it. There was a grace on it because as hard as it was for me to sit still, it was even less desirable for me to clean. Like, I'm not a cleaner. So I knew there was a grace on it. I knew that God was asking me to do it. But you know what's interesting is as I was cleaning through the house, because at first, full disclosure, I did not know why. And I still fully don't know why God's asking me to do this. But as I was cleaning, something began to happen. And it's continuing to happen. God began to clean out my soul along the way. He showed me how much I had shoved away that I completely forgot about. I brought out memories from my grandparents. I found my grandmother's Bible and just looked through old newspaper clippings from the 30s and 40s, poems my grandfather had written. I found my other grandfather created at 13 years old a record that my grandmother had put on a CD and given to me, singing a song about my grandmother when he was 13 years old back in the 40s. So many things, memories that I hadn't seen, some things I had never seen in my lifetime. He showed me books that I had bought when I was in my 20s and early 30s with wisdom in it that I hadn't got out in 5 or 10 years. And it reminded me a lot of the ideas that I would need, the wisdom I would need to go down the road that God would put me on. They were already there. They were already in my hand. The problem was I was moving so fast that I didn't take the time to look again, to check my numbers. And the sad part is they were just shoved in the closet. They were underneath all the extra stuff I was buying or keeping or trying to hide from other people, that I was trying to find the very thing that was inside all these items. And instead of going to buy it, instead of going to draw from the draw pile, instead of going to get an extra card, God showed me, slow down. You already have what you need for this next season. I hadn't checked my numbers in so long. I thought I needed something else. I don't know if you're like me, but so many times when I say, man, I need this, I need that, the first inclination is, I got to go to the store. I got to go to Target. I got to go to H-E-B. I got to go to Walmart. I have to go on Amazon. Amazon's a different beast altogether, if I'm honest. That's the first thing. You know why? Because while this holds a lot of knowledge, it also holds a lot of convenience. And sometimes convenience can kill, because we're just stacking up more stuff and we're just drawing more cards. And instead of me having to extend my hand out and physically draw it, I can just touch a button and it comes to me. I don't need more stuff. I don't need new stuff. God was showing me. God is showing me. I hope he's showing you. What we really need is to check our numbers. What do you have? You have a little oil in the bottom of the jar. You have a little flour at the bottom of the jar. What do you have that you can offer to God? And what does he want us to do with it? So we pick back up the story of the widow in verse 15, and it says, so she did as Elijah said. And this is so good. She did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers. Watch this, just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. And the most impressive part of this story for me, and the part that challenges me the most, is that she did as Elijah said. That took guts. That took faith. I just wonder if I would have had that kind of faith. I'd like to think so. I hope so. I wonder how many times God's asked me to give him what I have, and instead I go out and get something else to try to fix the problem because it's convenient. It's easy. So my question for all of us today is, what do we have? Time, wisdom, experience, health, strength, money, relationships, connections, technology, talent. Maybe it's as simple as you have a car, you have a phone, or just the infinite resources that are on the internet. Whatever it is, let's ask God to show us and remind us of what we have, how valuable it actually is, and then what he wants us to do with it. And whatever he asks us, let's step out in faith and do as the widow did. Let's do what he says. When we do, I believe that honoring him and stewarding what we have well shows him we can be trusted with what he has for us in the future. Before we go to draw another card, let's slow down enough to check our numbers. We may just have the exact card that we need. I hope this message blessed you today. I had such a fun time sharing my experiences and what God has shared with me, with you. And if you haven't already, like this video, share it with somebody, subscribe to the channel. I would love to be able to share and pour into you every single week as we go through this journey together. And in the meantime, in between time, hope God blesses you.